So, certain prisons in the state of California are on extreme high alert right now because, just being quite honest, nobody knows how bad this bloodbath is going to be. And when I talk about bloodbath, I'm talking about this racial war that basically was already started between black inmates and Hispanic inmates. Now, the scary thing about this is, right, nobody knows how devastating this war is going to be, and nobody knows how bloody it's going to be, and nobody knows how many lives are going to be lost. Now, one thing I can say I've learned over the years, working in the prison and in the jails, us as staff members that work in there, we don't have the ability to hit the stop button. If you think about, like, say, a music player, you got stop, fast forward, rewind, a pause, all that. Well, in the prisons, right, and the jails, we don't have the ability to hit the stop button. The best that we can do is hit the pause button. That's it. And when I say the stop button, I mean there's no way that you're going to make these inmates forget about the vendetta that they have with each other. There's no way that you're going to make them like, from the movie, what was it, Men in Black, and you put that little thing up and you flash it in their face and they forget everything. Ain't no such thing as that in prison. You know what I'm saying? So the best we can do is hit the pause button. And the pause button comes in the form of lockdowns. You start shifting different inmates at different institutions, moving folks around. You can do all that stuff, right? You can hit the pause button, but we will never hit the stop button. And my only thing is, and I've talked to other COs too, and the thing about it is, you don't know how far this is going to bleed over into other systems and to the streets, the county jails. You just don't know, because this beef that's going on with the black and Hispanic inmates, man, it's like, it can be like, it could have like this Armageddon type effect. And I'm gonna tell you a quick story, man, as a CO, about what it's like being involved in a race riot. Because some people, they don't know. You have people that watch these different videos and they tell their perspective, right, of what happens during a riot. And even with this thing that went on in Salinas Valley, you have a lot of people that were formerly incarcerated that they're telling their version of what happened at Salinas Valley, this, that, and the other. But I haven't seen no COs that's really got on here to kind of talk about it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to try to give a perspective on it. Now, let me tell you this story about this race riot. Now, obviously, you have no idea where this was, when it occurred, all those things, but it happened several years ago. And I remember I was outside of the institution at the time, and I was with one of my partners, but we had our radio on us. So we heard a CO get on the radio and, call out the fight, blah, 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 multiple inmates. And so it was a code 3 response, right? Now, the good thing that the officer didn't do, but we knew it was bad because we could recognize the voice of the CO that was saying it on the radio. And this dude, he is a straight OG. He's been in the game for, at that point, he was probably in the game for like almost 30 years. You know what I'm saying? And so he was very frantic on the radio. So we knew it had to be something. Now, thank God, once we got there, we realized it was a race riot. But one of the things is, if it is a race, then this is for any new COs getting in the game. If there is some type of a race riot going on, you don't call that out on the radio. You don't say, hey, we got black and white inmates, or we got brown and white inmates fighting. You don't say that, because the other inmates, they're around the COs that have the radios they can hear. So when he called the fight out, we knew it was something. So we responded. And everybody in the mama, when you have like a code 3 type scenario, everybody in the mama is running to that fight, because it's something that's huge. It's a big deal. And I'll never forget, man, we were running to the fight. Now, we weren't sprinting because we had a long way to run. You know what I'm saying? So we were trying to preserve our gas. But as we were going to the fight, I'll never forget it. I seen one inmate, because it's almost like two ships passing. So as we're going to the fight, jogging to the fight, we saw other inmates being escorted away from the fight. So we were crossing like two ships. So the first crossing I seen with an inmate had two COs, had a Hispanic inmate. He was cuffed up. He was covered in blood, just bleeding everywhere. He was like, man, man, I got hit, this, that, and the other. So I'm like, dang, he got mopped, so then we keep jogging, and then we passed the next inmate, and here goes, it was another Hispanic inmate. So he was covered in blood. He was banged up. So at that point, I'm just like, okay, man, this is a pretty good fight. So then the next inmate that we passed, it was a black inmate, and he was covered in blood. And when I saw that, I was just like, oh, shoot. I think we got a race thing going on. And as you're running to that scene, or as we were running to that scene and just seeing some of the casualties coming out, I was just like, dang, man, what am I getting ready to run into? So we get in the unit, and I mean, it was like all hell had broke loose. You have blood all over the place. You have folks that was trying to crawl out of the way from getting sprayed. We went down with some fireworks. You know what I'm saying? We let off some fireworks in the unit. It looked like 4th of July in there, but it was just complete chaos. So we got that unit under control. You know what I'm saying? It took a little bit, but we got that unit under control. And this next mistake was on us, right? Because of the way that we escorted the inmates. So the way we escorted the inmates, it was you were able to have other inmates that were somewhere else, they were able to see. So you know what I'm saying, whenever there's a fight, inmates, they're gonna see who it is that got cuffed up. But in this situation, that was on us. We messed up and caused another riot or disturbance to pop off in a different part of the prison, because when we were escorting them, they were in plain view of some of the other inmates. So clearly, when you see black inmates and Hispanic inmates getting escorted and they covered in blood, you know it's game on. So now in this area of the prison, it start popping off. So here we go, right? Another round two from the same, you know what I'm saying, the same day, the same time, all that stuff. So now we in a different part of the prison running. We got there. It looked like 4th of July. It looked like a war zone in there. And it was funny because I can't go into specifics because it's dealing with institution security. But basically, I had a partner, right? He was in good shape, and I wasn't in such good shape. And so this dude, he had some munitions on him that he was using. That's all I can say, right? He had some munitions on him, but I had to stay with him. And it was just going. You had dudes. I mean, I'm telling you, it looked like a straight up war zone. Smoke everywhere, flashbangs going everywhere, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. It just looked like a war zone. And you seen some of the inmates, they were trying to dive out of the way because, the fireworks, it was just like 4th of July up in there. And so the dude that had the munitions and stuff, I was like, hey, man, you got to slow down, because he was in good shape. Now, it ain't his fault. It was my fault, you know what I'm saying, because I wasn't in the best of shape, but I had to stay with him. And so I was like, man, you need to slow down a little bit, man. Dang. You know what I'm saying? I said it too. I was like, you out here running like a deer. Slow down, man. I got to stay with you, man. We got a riot going on. And it was funny. He kind of chuckled a little bit, and he kept doing what he was doing, and we were involved, but it was bad. And the weeks after that, it was tense. It was bad. And this is why I tell you, you don't know how far it's going to go, and you don't know who else is going to get involved, because at that time we separated the black and the Hispanic inmates, all that kind of stuff. And so what ended up happening was, there was something that was going on. This was like down the road. And so it was, white inmates came out and black inmates came out. And then the white inmates, they had attacked the black inmates, because the white inmates, they have an alliance with the Southsiders. You know what I'm saying? The Southern inmates. So we just, we respond to that or whatever. But that situation, man, that race riot, it was crazy, because it was like, it really was, brown versus black. And again, at the time, I wasn't afraid, because you don't have time. You're going to fight or you're going to hit that flight. It's one or the other, because it's just so chaotic. You know what I'm saying? And you saw dudes, they was getting stabbed up. Dudes had broomsticks and they was busting folks upside the head with the broom. Anything and everything that they could get their hands on, the inmates were using it against each other. And when you have a situation like that, it's all bad, because that's going to be your biggest populations in any prison, generally speaking. You're black and brown, those are your biggest populations. And then, of course, the whites, depending on the situation, they'll fall under with the Hispanics and all this kind of stuff, right? So I was just like, dang, this is crazy. So after everything was over and I went home and I showered, I couldn't even touch my kid, because, I was like covered in OC spray because we spray fireworks, all that stuff. And when I was at home, it was reactivating, and it was crazy. And people, that tell these stories on here, they're always talking about it from the perspective of, what I'm saying, an inmate or a formerly incarcerated inmate, which is cool. But these race riots, what I'm saying, not only can inmates get hurt, but you have staff that can get hurt. Now, I know I ain't stupid. We know that, there are some COs, they like to antagonize things. They like to kick the hornet's nest, what I'm saying, for entertainment purposes, but everybody don't get down with that stuff. Everybody ain't with that. Some of us, what I'm saying, we try to keep the peace. We know certain things are inevitable. When you're in prison, you're going to have violence. There's no way around that. But we're not trying to like add fuel to the fire and make things worse. So when it comes to this situation with, what I'm saying, the blacks having issues with the Hispanics, or the Hispanics having issues with the black, whichever way you want to look at it, this stuff is just going to be bad for everybody. Now, right now, certain institutions, they're locked down. But like I said, we that work in the prison, the only button that we can hit is the pause button. We can't hit the rewind button. We can't hit the fast forward button for sure. And we sure enough can't hit the stop button. It don't matter how much you try. And I know there are people in the upper echelon that think that, we're able to do this stop button and everything will. No, the inmates will never forget the mission that they have. If they get that kite or they get that wheeler, y'all shout out to, the Hispanic people, right? If you get that, wheeler's Spanish for a kite, a note, right? So if you get that note, excuse me, and it says that it's on site and you got to attack so-and-so, it don't matter if y'all in that cell locked down for 2 years. As soon as y'all come up from that 2-year lockdown, your behind better go over and stab whoever that person is. And it works for all the races. You have to. If you don't, you're going to be dealt with. But what people don't understand is, there are a lot of COs that they don't want this violence. You know what I'm saying? They don't want this extra stuff. Because again, we already know prison is a violent environment. We know that. But you don't want to just, again, add fuel to the fire unnecessarily, or you don't want to just kick the hornet's nest just for entertainment purposes. You know what I'm saying? People, I know I'm getting older. I recently got hurt responding to a fight. Now, I can't go into details about it, but, I got hurt getting involved in a fight. It is what it is. And I'm sitting at home and I'm just like, man, I'm getting older. I don't heal like I used to heal. You know what I'm saying? Probably 10, 15 years ago, if this would have happened, I probably would have bounced back. I probably would have been good. I'm getting older. You know what I'm saying? So it affects so many people. And it's not just the inmates. But with this situation where you have this beef going on between the black and Hispanic inmates, nobody knows. I know I keep stuttering because I'm trying to find the right words to say, but there's no way that anybody can really predict how bad this is going to be, how bloody this is going to be, and how many people might die behind it. But I can guarantee you, whenever Salinas Valley comes off lockdown, right? And whenever any other institutions that are affected, when they come up from lockdown, whatever missions they've been given to attack a person or whatever, they are going to do it. War has already been declared. And like I said, we hit the pause button, but we can't hit the stop button. So once they come up, you just don't know how bad it's going to be. But just know, man, all COs, they don't want these types of things to happen. Because again, I'm sitting at home hurt. I don't know how long I'm going to be out. And it's like, again, I signed up for it. I know this stuff can happen, right? But it makes you just think about things. I'm sitting at home. Again, I'm getting older. I'm not healing like I used to heal. And then there's certain other things that I wouldn't dare speak on, but there's alliances that used to be inside of the prisons that are no longer, right? Certain, I'll just say it like that, certain alliances that used to be established and well known and there was no questions asked about it, a lot of those alliances, it's no more. So once this race war really, really kicks off, because again, we can only hit the pause button, not the stop button. So once this war kicks off, you don't really know how the alliances are going to reshape. Some people have ideas of how they think it's going to reshape, and I'll let those people comment on that. But this race war, man, in California, I don't know, man. I hope, I don't know. Again, I understand prison is a violent environment. This is just par for the course. I get that. But when you have such big juggernaut entities that are scoring off with each other, it takes on a different meaning. It just hits different. It's like you have almost your two biggest populations going at it. And again, we know that when things happen in the streets, it can make its way into the prison and affect things. And then things that happen in the prison, it could trickle out and affect things in the streets or in the county jails. So there's a lot of people that are on edge right now, COs as well as inmates. And y'all should know by now, when you watch my videos, I'm going to keep it real. And right now I'm out, so my stress levels aren't nowhere near like what they were. But let's just say if I was a CO that was at that institution and I had to deal with this pending thing, if any good CO worth the salt in their bread, if they're honest, they're gonna say, "Yeah, man, I'm nervous. I'm scared because I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know how bad this is gonna be." Because again, you know what I'm saying? We're the ones that have to respond to put that fire out, whether or not we started the fire or not, because I already know how some of y'all think. And I've acknowledged, yeah, there are times when things happen that the prison probably made things worse. You know what I'm saying? Making stupid decisions or whatever the case may be. But once, that alarm goes on and it's down and it's going down, it's a code 3, whatever you want to call it, you got to get down with the business. And we're in the middle of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? And again, especially the older staff, you realize you're not Superman anymore. You are not. You break a leg or you break an arm or what, you're not going to heal the same way you would heal when you was 21 or 25 fresh out of the academy. It ain't going to happen like that. It just doesn't work. So for this, I don't know, man. I don't know. And obviously, I'm not going to comment on the interpolitical things about it because clearly, I'm not picking a side. That's not my job. You know what I'm saying? I'm not an inmate and I'm not rooting for either side. My job is just to put the fire out, get paid, whatever it is. But you just don't know, again, how far reaching this war is going to be. Again, police officers, if you're watching this or whatever, you should probably holler at, if you don't really normally talk to, gang intel people in the jails and the prisons, y'all probably need to start communicating. You know what I'm saying? Because again, you don't know how much this is going to bleed out. And I'll tell you one last thing. I remember it was two different inmates. Now, this happened years ago, and it was at a certain facility. And years later, I'm at a totally different facility, and I ran into a black inmate that was involved in that race riot. And then I ran into a Hispanic inmate that was involved in that riot. Now, I didn't meet them at the same time, but I met them at different times. Now, they remembered me, but I didn't remember them. A lot of times, unless you have interactions with an inmate, if they're on your work detail or, they might be known for being a troublemaker, whatever, you're not going to necessarily know every face. Now, they're going to know you know what I'm saying? But it's just so many faces to try to keep track of. But when they've refreshed my memory, I was like, okay, yeah, I remember you. But I remember I first talked to the black dude, and and this is funny, right? We were at a totally different facility at this time, years later. And he was like, hey, what's going on, CO? You remember me? And whoop, whoop, whoop. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I remember you. And he was like, man, I remember when you came over. I ain't going to say where it was, but he was like, man, you came over to our area. And he was like, I know you was trying to be quiet, but I could hear you. Because I went up to one of the COs and I whispered in his ear. I thought I was whispering. I whispered in his ear and I said, hey, man, it's like a war zone out there. It's a race right going on. But I said it quiet, but he just heard the part about the war zone. So he was like, man, I heard you when you said there was a race war going. I mean, not a race war. He said, I heard you when you said that it's what was it? Let me pause this because I can't even remember. Okay, yeah. So he said, I remember you saying that it was a war zone out there. And he was like, I didn't have no knife on me or anything at the time. And he was like, I never felt so vulnerable. And he was like, after that, and it's kind of weird because it was a high security facility where I was working. So maybe he was just starting to do his time or something. I don't know. But later on, talking to him, it was at a lower level security facility. And he was just like, man, I remember when you came in there, you said it was like a war zone. I didn't have no knife. And, I was scared. He's like, I didn't know what was going on. He said, but after that, he was like, man, big dog, I never left my cell without a knife. And it's funny because you'll be surprised the conversations that you have. You know what I'm saying? And then there was the Hispanic dude, right? And he looked familiar, but I couldn't place which facility it was that I worked at where I recognized him. And so he told me, oh, nah, man, you remember me? I was over in so and so block where it kicked off, man. And then he named the black dude that kind of started everything, and he knew all the sequence of events, and it was like, that's where I was like, okay, I remember you. And we just chopped it up for a few minutes, and of course during that time it's chaotic, and it's again, depending on how bad it is, it can be like a war zone going on. But you just never know. You know what I'm saying? When you have these interactions with people, there's been times where I'm having a cordial conversation with an inmate, and then 10 minutes later, I could be jumping on that inmate because he's stabbing somebody. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's literally has happened before. So you just never know. But when it comes to these types of things where you have like two giant cars that might end up, well, not might, they going to collide. They're going to collide. They've already collided, but we just don't know how bad it's going to be. But I just wanted to do this video so that way you could kind of get a different perspective, because you always get the perspective of the inmates and or former inmates. And I'm not going to talk about the inner political stuff, but just know all COs, what I'm saying, they're not trying to encourage that type of stuff, because there's heavy ramifications again on the streets, the jails, and the prisons. You don't know how bad it's going to go, and staff are most likely going to get hurt. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to who else is going to break it up? Who else is going to put the flex cuffs on them dudes once they get done? It got to be us to do it. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully this video will be a good tool for people that are thinking about getting into this profession, because I'm telling you, it's yeah, you can get caught up with CNCOs driving the fancy cars, having the boats, the RVs, going on all these trips, but just know they paying the price for that stuff. There's probably a lot of things that they're dealing with in their minds or in their bodies that they may not tell anybody, but just know they're not getting them boats and them RVs and all that stuff for free. That is taking a toll on them. So until the next one, holla at your boy.